China's dominance in the electric vehicle (EV) market is reshaping the global automotive industry. In 2023, Chinese EV sales reached almost 6 million units, accounting for nearly 60% of global EV sales. This rapid growth has sent shockwaves through traditional automotive powerhouses in the West. But China's EV success story isn't just about cars. It's a testament to the country's broader economic ambitions and its growing influence on the world stage. As we delve deeper into this topic, I urge you to consider how these developments might affect your future vehicle choices and the broader implications for global trade and geopolitics. China's EV industry is closely tied to the country's strategic goals, including its leadership role in the BRICS group. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have recently expanded to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. This enlarged bloc now represents over 45% of the world's population and accounts for a larger share of global GDP than the G7 countries when adjusted for purchasing power parity. China's EV industry serves as a prime example of how BRICS nations, particularly China, are challenging the established economic order. The success of Chinese EV manufacturers like BYD, which overtook Tesla as the world's largest EV maker in Q4 2023, demonstrates the shifting balance of industrial power. However, China's EV ambitions face significant hurdles in Western markets. Both the United States and the European Union have implemented measures to protect their domestic industries and address concerns about Chinese subsidies. In the US, President Biden has quadrupled tariffs on Chinese EVs to 100% and tripled tariffs on Chinese lithium-ion EV batteries to 25%. The EU, meanwhile, has imposed anti-subsidy duties of up to 38.1% on Chinese EVs, on top of existing 10% tariffs. These measures reflect growing concerns in the West about China's industrial policies and their impact on fair competition. The EU in particular aims to protect its automotive sector, which employs about 13.8 million people or 6% of the bloc's workforce. China's response to these trade barriers has been multifaceted. On one hand, Chinese EV makers are accelerating plans to establish production facilities in Europe and other markets to circumvent tariffs. On the other hand, China is leveraging its control over critical minerals and rare earth elements to maintain its competitive edge. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China has secured access to vast reserves of lithium, cobalt, and other essential EV battery materials across Africa and Latin America. For instance, Chinese firms are investing nearly $2.8 billion in Zimbabwe's lithium industry and are involved in major projects in Guinea and Serbia. This control over the EV supply chain gives China significant leverage in trade negotiations and geopolitical disputes. In recent years, China has shown willingness to use this leverage, imposing export restrictions on critical materials like graphite, germanium, and gallium in response to Western tech sanctions. The message from Beijing is clear. Attempts to exclude China from the global EV market will come at a cost. As Cullen Hendricks from the Peterson Institute for International Economics notes, China is using these export restrictions as a reminder to tread carefully when you try to cut us completely out of the electric vehicle future. Despite China's impressive growth in the EV sector, several significant hurdles stand in the way of its global dominance. First and foremost is the issue of overcapacity. China's EV industry has expanded rapidly, creating far more production capacity than the domestic market can absorb. According to the International Energy Agency, in 2023, China used less than 40% of its maximum cell output, and its cathode and anode active material installed manufacturing capacity was almost 4 and 9 times greater than global EV cell demand. This overcapacity has led to fierce competition and price wars within China, potentially undermining the long-term sustainability of many EV manufacturers. Another major challenge is profitability. Despite extensive government support and expanding sales, very few Chinese EV producers and battery makers are turning a profit. This lack of profitability raises questions about the long-term viability of many players in the market and could lead to industry consolidation. China also faces significant barriers in key international markets, particularly the United States and Europe. These regions have implemented or are considering implementing tariffs and other trade barriers to protect their domestic industries. For instance, the US has quadrupled tariffs on Chinese EVs to 100% and tripled tariffs on Chinese lithium-ion EV batteries to 25%. Similarly, the EU has imposed provisional duties of up to 38.1% on EV imports from China. These measures significantly hinder Chinese manufacturers' ability to compete in these crucial markets. There's also the challenge of perception. Some consumers in Western markets may have concerns about the quality or reliability of Chinese-made vehicles, despite significant improvements in recent years. Overcoming these perceptions and building brand trust internationally will be crucial for Chinese EV makers. Furthermore, as the EV market matures, competition from established global automakers is intensifying. Companies like Volkswagen, GM, and Ford are investing heavily in EV technology and production, leveraging their existing brand recognition and global distribution networks. Lastly, China faces the challenge of securing a stable supply of critical raw materials for EV batteries, such as lithium, cobalt, and nickel. While China has made significant investments in securing these resources globally, geopolitical tensions and increasing resource nationalism in some countries could potentially disrupt these supply chains. Now let's examine how US and EU sanctions have influenced China's strategy in the EV industry. The imposition of tariffs and other trade barriers by the US and EU has had a significant impact on China's EV strategy, forcing Chinese manufacturers to adapt and evolve their approach to global markets. One of the most notable shifts has been an acceleration of plans to establish production facilities in Europe and other markets to circumvent tariffs. For instance, BYD announced in December that it would build an EV factory in Hungary, becoming the first major Chinese automaker to build passenger cars in Europe. This move allows Chinese companies to maintain their competitive edge while avoiding the high tariffs on imports. The sanctions have also pushed Chinese EV makers to focus more intensely on other international markets where trade barriers are lower. This includes a greater emphasis on markets in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America. For example, Chinese EV exports to countries like Thailand and Brazil have seen significant growth in recent years. Furthermore, the trade tensions have spurred Chinese companies to invest more heavily in research and development to maintain their technological edge. This includes efforts to improve battery technology, enhance autonomous driving capabilities, and develop more advanced manufacturing processes. By staying at the forefront of innovation, Chinese firms aim to offer products that are compelling enough to overcome trade barriers. The sanctions have also influenced China's domestic industrial policy. The Chinese government has doubled down on its support for the EV industry, viewing it as a key sector for maintaining economic growth and technological leadership. In February, 9 government agencies pledged support to accelerate Chinese EV makers' global push. This includes measures to help companies establish overseas production bases and expand their international sales networks. Moreover, China has leveraged its control over critical minerals and rare earth elements as a strategic response to Western sanctions. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, China has secured access to vast reserves of lithium, cobalt, and other essential EV battery materials across Africa and Latin America. This control over the EV supply chain gives China significant leverage in trade negotiations and geopolitical disputes. The sanctions have also led to a greater emphasis on developing a robust domestic market for EVs in China. By nurturing a large and competitive home market, Chinese companies can achieve economies of scale and improve their products, better preparing them for international competition. Lastly, the trade tensions have prompted China to seek closer economic ties with other major economies, particularly in the global south. This includes efforts to establish new trade agreements and investment partnerships that could provide alternative markets for Chinese EVs and related technologies. The impact of China's EV rise extends beyond the automotive sector. It's reshaping global trade patterns, accelerating the shift towards renewable energy, and intensifying competition for critical resources. For Western countries, reducing dependence on Chinese EV supply chains has become a matter of economic and national security. However, disentangling from China's EV ecosystem is easier said than done. China's head start in EV technology, its vast domestic market, and its control over critical minerals give it significant advantages that will be hard to overcome in the short term. As we look to the future, it's clear that China's rise in the EV market will continue to have far-reaching implications. For consumers, it may mean access to more affordable electric vehicles. For policymakers, it presents complex challenges in balancing economic interests, environmental goals, and national security concerns. The global EV race is far from over, and the actions taken by governments, industries, and consumers in the coming years will shape the future of not just transportation, but the global economic order itself.